When that fake HOA security guard put handcuffs on my 9-year-old Sophie, her tears broke my heart. "Daddy, why are they doing this?" she whispered from her wheelchair. Before I could move, my 68-year-old mother stepped between them. The guard laughed at the gray-haired lady in a floral shirt, his biggest mistake. "Take those handcuffs off my granddaughter," Mom said in a voice that reminded me of her police days. The guard smiled and said no. That's when Mom grabbed his arm and twisted it behind his back so fast he fell to the ground. What happened next shocked everyone in our neighborhood, and was just the beginning of how one retired cop took down the fake HOA empire that had terrorized us all. Before we start the story, please comment down from which country are you watching and don't forget to subscribe. We moved to Willow Creek Estate 6 months ago, looking for a new beginning. After my wife Maria died from cancer, raising Sophie alone became my whole world. Our apartment in the city wasn't working anymore. Sophie's wheelchair couldn't navigate the narrow hallways, and the bathroom was impossible without major modifications. When I found the single-story house with wide doorways and a backyard where Sophie could enjoy the sunshine, it seemed perfect. "What do you think, kiddo?" I asked as we toured the house for the first time. Sophie's eyes lit up as she wheeled herself easily from room to room without getting stuck in doorways. "I can go everywhere by myself," she exclaimed, her smile brighter than I'd seen in months. Sophie was born with spina bifida, and while her wheelchair had always been part of our lives, our old apartment had made her disability more limiting than it needed to be. The real estate agent mentioned there was a homeowners association, but assured us they were fairly relaxed, with reasonable monthly fees that covered landscaping and community pool maintenance. The neighborhood looked peaceful, tidy houses with well-kept yards, children playing, and friendly waves from neighbors. We used Maria's life insurance money for the down payment and moved in on a sunny Saturday in April. For the first week, everything seemed perfect. Sophie started at her new school, where they had better resources for students with disabilities. I set up my home office, grateful that my job as a software developer allowed me to work remotely and be available when Sophie needed me. The trouble started exactly 8 days after we moved in. I was helping Sophie practice wheeling up the gentle ramp we'd installed at our front door when a sharp knock interrupted us. A woman stood on our porch, her face pinched in disapproval. She wore a navy blazer with a pin that read WCA Security Committee, and carried a clipboard stuffed with papers. "Mr. Harris?" she asked without introducing herself. "That's me," I replied, putting a protective hand on Sophie's shoulder. "And you are?" "Beverly Winters, head of the Willow Creek Enforcement Authority," she said, her voice clipped and official sounding. "You've installed an unauthorized structure on your property." She pointed at Sophie's ramp with a pen. I blinked in confusion. "It's a wheelchair ramp for my daughter." Beverly's expression didn't soften as she glanced at Sophie. "All exterior modifications require written approval. This ramp violates our aesthetic guidelines." Sophie looked up at me, her brown eyes worried. I squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "I understand there might be paperwork, but this is a necessary accommodation for my daughter's disability," I explained calmly. "I'm happy to submit whatever forms you need retroactively." Beverly shook her head. "Policy is policy. You'll receive a formal citation. The ramp must be removed within 48 hours, or you'll face a $500 fine plus daily penalties." As she marched away, Sophie's shoulders slumped. "Are they going to make us take my ramp away, Dad?" "No way, sweetheart," I promised, though anger bubbled in my chest. "That ramp isn't going anywhere." That evening, I researched housing laws and confirmed what I already suspected. The Americans with Disabilities Act and Fair Housing Act protected our right to make reasonable modifications for Sophie's disability. I printed out the relevant sections, planning to politely educate Beverly when she returned. I didn't get the chance. The next morning, an official-looking notice was taped to our door, demanding $500 for the unauthorized structure, plus $50 per day until it was removed. 3 days later, I was helping Sophie into the car for school when a white SUV with WCA Security, painted on the side, pulled up in front of our house. 2 men in uniform-like outfits approached us. The taller one had a crew cut and mirrored sunglasses, while the shorter, stockier man wore a utility belt with what appeared to be handcuffs and pepper spray. "Mr. Harris?" the taller one asked. "I'm Officer Daniels and this is Officer Reynolds with HOA Security. You've ignored multiple notices regarding code violations." I stood up straight, positioning myself between them and Sophie. "There must be some misunderstanding. The ramp is a necessary accommodation for my daughter's disability, which is protected by federal law." "We don't answer to federal law," Reynolds said with a smirk. "We enforce the community standards of Willow Creek." Something about their demeanor made me uneasy. Their badges looked theatrical rather than official, and neither had name tags or badge numbers. "Are you actual law enforcement officers?" I asked directly. Daniels puffed out his chest. "We're authorized security personnel for this community." "Dad," Sophie whispered from the car, "we're going to be late for school." I nodded, not wanting to frighten her with a confrontation. "We'll sort this out later," I told the men, getting into the driver's seat. "Please leave any additional notices in the mailbox." As we drove away, I saw them taking pictures of our house in the rearview mirror. Something didn't feel right about this security force, but I couldn't put my finger on what. At Sophie's school, I mentioned the odd encounter to her teacher, Ms. Rivera. "Oh, those guys," she sighed, looking around to make sure no one else was listening. "They're bad news. Beverly runs that neighborhood like her personal kingdom. My sister lived there before she moved away, said it was like living under a dictator." "Are they actual security guards?" "They act like police?" I asked. Ms. Rivera shook her head. "From what my sister said, they're just Beverly's henchmen playing dress-up. But be careful, they've been known to boot cars, cut off water lines, and even call child services on families who challenge them." That afternoon, I checked our HOA documents carefully. The original papers mentioned a professional management company, not an internal security force. When I called the county records office, I discovered something interesting. The official Willow Creek HOA had been dissolved 3 years ago after financial mismanagement. Whatever authority Beverly and her security team claimed to have, it wasn't legal. Over the next 2 weeks, the harassment intensified. Orange violation notices appeared on our door daily. Our trash cans were improperly positioned. Our mailbox was non-regulation height. Sophie's adaptive bicycle in the backyard was an unauthorized recreational item. I documented everything, taking photos of each notice and keeping a log of when the security SUV parked outside our house. I installed security cameras that captured Reynolds measuring our grass with a ruler and Daniels taking pictures of Sophie's bedroom window. The final straw came when I found a notice claiming we'd violated noise ordinances because Sophie had been laughing too loudly while playing in our backyard. The fine was $350. I wasn't the only one being targeted. Our neighbor to the right, an elderly man named Mr. Chin, received daily citations for his non-approved vegetable garden. The young couple across the street was being fined because their newborn baby cried at night, allegedly disturbing the peace. I began carefully reaching out to neighbors, inviting them for coffee or stopping to chat when we crossed paths. Many seemed nervous about talking but eventually opened up about their experiences with Beverly and her security team. Mrs. Peterson, a widow in her 70s, admitted she'd paid over $3,000 in fines during the past year, nearly a quarter of her fixed income, because Beverly threatened to place a lien on her house. The Rodriguez family showed me citations they'd received for speaking Spanish on their front porch, classified as creating a disturbance. What shocked me most was discovering that Beverly wasn't depositing these fines into any community account. My neighbor Tom, who worked at the local bank, confirmed that all checks were going into a private account under Beverly's name. This wasn't just harassment, it was fraud on a massive scale. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in housing discrimination. She confirmed my suspicions. Without a legally established HOA, Beverly had no authority to issue fines or enforce rules. The security officers had no legal standing whatsoever. Their actions constituted harassment, fraud, and possibly impersonation of law enforcement. "You have a strong case," she told me, "but these situations can get ugly. Beverly's been running this scheme for years, she won't give up her power easily." That's when I decided to call in reinforcements. My mother, Catherine, Kat, to her colleagues on the Chicago police force, had recently retired after 30 years as a detective. She'd been planning to visit us anyway, and her experience with con artists and bullies might be exactly what we needed. Mom arrived on a Wednesday afternoon, her compact frame carrying only a small suitcase but enough attitude to fill the neighborhood. At 68, her hair might have turned silver, but her mind was sharp as ever and her reflexes hadn't slowed a bit. Sophie adored her grandmother, who never treated her disability as a limitation and always brought the most creative, adaptive toys and games. As Sophie showed off her new bedroom, Mom listened to my explanation of our HOA troubles with narrowed eyes. She'd always had a sixth sense for detecting dishonesty, which had made her a legendary detective. "So these jokers are pretending to be security officers, extorting money from the neighborhood, and now they're harassing my granddaughter?" she summarized, her Chicago accent becoming more pronounced as her anger rose. "That about covers it," I confirmed. Mom nodded once, decisively. I've taken down organized crime rings, son. A couple of fake security guards and a wannabe dictator don't scare me. The next morning, Mom was up before dawn, examining our collection of violation notices with professional interest. By the time Sophie woke up, she'd organized everything into categories and created a timeline of escalation. Classic intimidation tactics, she explained as we ate breakfast. Start with small violations to establish authority, then gradually increase frequency and financial penalties. Watch your reactions to see who'll fight back. What should we do? I asked. First, we gather more evidence and find allies. Then we force them to overplay their hand, Mom said with a gleam in her eye that I recognized from childhood. It was the same look she'd had when confronting my middle school principal about ignoring bullying, or when she'd marched into the police station to expose corruption in her own department. It was a look that said, someone had picked the wrong grandmother to mess with. Mom spent the day meeting neighbors, her friendly demeanor masking her detective's mind. She brought cookies to Mrs. Peterson, helped Mr. Chen with his garden, and chatted with the Rodriguez family about their new baby. By dinner, she'd identified 15 households being systematically targeted by Beverly's fake HOA. Most people are too afraid to fight back individually, she explained, but together they might find courage. We need to create a safe way for everyone to share information and support each other. We created a private online group where neighbors could document their experiences and upload photos of violation notices. Mom set up a secure Dropbox on our porch where people could anonymously leave copies of receipts or other evidence. Within days, the scale of Beverly's operation became clear. She'd collected over $200,000 in fraudulent fines during the past 3 years. The money funded not only her lifestyle but paid salaries to Daniels and Reynolds to enforce her rules. Several neighbors reported that the security officers had entered their homes without permission to inspect for violations. This goes beyond fraud, Mom said grimly after reviewing everything. This is breaking and entering, intimidation, and possibly impersonating law enforcement. We need to take this to the real police. We decided to host a neighborhood meeting on Sunday afternoon, a casual barbecue where people could safely share their experiences and sign official statements for the police report we planned to file on Monday. The weather cooperated perfectly with sunny skies and a gentle breeze. I set up tables and chairs in our backyard while Mom prepared her famous potato salad. Sophie was excited to have so many people coming over and insisted on making lemonade to serve our guests. By 3 o'clock, over 20 neighbors had gathered, bringing food and stories. Mom moved among them with a detective's precision, collecting details, clarifying timelines, and building a comprehensive case. Mr. Chen brought his violation notices dating back 3 years. Mrs. Peterson had bank statements showing payments to Beverly's account. The Rodriguez family had recorded video of Daniels threatening to report them to immigration if they didn't pay their fines. Sophie wheeled around the yard, serving lemonade and making everyone smile with her bright chatter. For the first time since moving in, I felt like we were part of a real community. People were standing taller, sharing laughs, and planning how to reclaim their neighborhood. That's when it all went sideways. Beverly's white SUV screeched to a halt in front of our house. She stormed through the side gate with Daniels and Reynolds flanking her like bodyguards. She held a stack of papers and wore an expression of pure fury. "This unauthorized gathering violates community regulations," she announced loudly. "Everyone needs to disperse immediately." The yard fell silent as neighbors turned to look. Some instinctively began gathering their things, conditioned by years of intimidation. Mom stepped forward, her posture relaxed but alert. "There's no violation here, Beverly. Just neighbors enjoying Sunday afternoon together." Beverly's eyes narrowed as she took in my mother. "And who might you be?" "Catherine Harris," Mom replied pleasantly. "Retired Chicago PD, 30 years on the force, last 20 as detective. I'm visiting my son and granddaughter." Something flickered in Beverly's eyes, uncertainty perhaps, but she recovered quickly. "Your family history is irrelevant. This gathering exceeds the permitted number of guests without prior approval." "Approval from whom?" Mom asked innocently. "The Willow Creek HOA was legally dissolved 3 years ago, according to county records. You have no authority to approve or disapprove anything." Beverly's face flushed red. "That's false information. The HOA is fully operational under my leadership." "Then you won't mind showing us the official registration, the election records, and the financial statements?" Mom pressed. "Since you're collecting money, I'm sure you file proper tax documents too." Reynolds stepped forward, hand resting on his utility belt. "Ma'am, we're not here to debate legalities. This gathering needs to end now." Sophie chose that moment to wheel over with her lemonade tray. "Would you like some lemonade?" she asked Beverly with innocent politeness. Beverly ignored her completely, but Daniels bent down with exaggerated concern. "Young lady, you're participating in an unauthorized event. That's against community rules." Sophie looked confused. "It's just lemonade, sir. And serving food without a permit is a violation," he said sternly. "I'll need to see your parents' approval forms." I stepped forward, anger rising. "Leave my daughter alone. She's just serving lemonade in her own backyard." Reynolds moved to stand beside Daniels. "Sir, interference with security operations is grounds for immediate action." Mom caught my eye and gave me the tiniest head shake, a warning not to escalate. But it was too late. Beverly saw an opportunity to reassert her authority in front of the wavering crowd. "Officers," she announced loudly, "I want everyone's identification. Anyone who can't produce proof of residence will receive a $750 fine for trespassing." Several neighbors began reaching for wallets, the habit of compliance hard to break. "You're not officers," Mrs. Peterson said suddenly, her voice quavering but determined. "The police department confirmed you have no law enforcement authority." Beverly's face twisted with rage. "Daniels, Reynolds, detain the troublemakers. We'll let the real police sort this out." And that's when everything exploded. Daniels grabbed Sophie's wheelchair handles, preventing her from moving. Reynolds produced a pair of handcuffs and reached for her small wrists. "You're under neighborhood arrest for multiple violations," Daniels announced as if reciting from a script. The moment those fake HOA security guards put handcuffs on my 9-year-old daughter Sophie, her face crumpled in fear and tears streamed down her cheeks. "Daddy, help me," she cried, her small hands trapped behind her wheelchair. That's when my 68-year-old mother stepped forward, her eyes cold as ice. Most people saw a gray-haired grandmother in a flowered shirt, but I knew better. 30 years as Chicago's toughest police detective hadn't softened her reflexes one bit. "Take those cuffs off my granddaughter right now," Mom said in that deadly quiet voice I remembered from my childhood. When Reynolds smirked and told her to mind her own business, she moved so fast I barely saw it happen. In 3 seconds flat, she had him face down on our lawn with his arm twisted behind his back, her knee firmly planted between his shoulder blades. "I said take them off," she growled. "Or I'll show you what a real police officer can do." The yard erupted into chaos. I rushed to Sophie, pulling Daniels away from her wheelchair. Neighbors who moments before had been intimidated now surged forward, phones out, recording everything. Mr. Rodriguez was already on the phone with 911. Daniels reached for something on his belt, probably pepper spray, but Mom's voice cut through the noise. "Touch that and you're looking at assault with a chemical agent. That's 5 to 7 years minimum." Her professional tone made him freeze. Meanwhile, Reynolds was whimpering beneath her expertly applied hold. "You're breaking my arm." "No," Mom replied calmly, "but I could. Just like you're not arresting my granddaughter because you can't. You have no authority, no training, and as of right now, no job." Beverly, seeing her enforcers neutralized, began backing away. "This is assault. You're all witnesses. She attacked my security officer." "Former detective performing a citizen's arrest on individuals impersonating law enforcement," Mom corrected. "And about 20 witnesses to you attempting to handcuff a disabled minor without cause or authority." The wail of police sirens cut through the tension. 2 patrol cars pulled up, and 4 uniformed officers approached cautiously, taking in the bizarre scene. "What's going on here?" the lead officer asked, hand resting on his weapon. Mom, still maintaining her hold on Reynolds, replied professionally. "Officer, I'm Catherine Harris, retired Chicago PD, badge number 4587. These individuals attempted to place my granddaughter in handcuffs while falsely claiming police authority. I've performed a citizen's arrest on this one, who was carrying an unauthorized weapon and restraints." The officer looked startled but recognized a fellow professional. "Let us take over, ma'am." Mom nodded and smoothly transferred Reynolds to the officer's custody, the movement so practiced it looked choreographed. I held Sophie, who was trembling but no longer crying as she watched her grandmother in awe. "Grandma is a superhero," she whispered to me. The next few hours were a blur of statements and evidence collection. The real police were overwhelmed by the number of neighbors eager to provide testimony about Beverly's years of fraudulent activity. Mom handed over our organized evidence packets, complete with financial records, photos, and witness statements. Beverly, Daniels, and Reynolds were taken to the police station for questioning. When officers searched the SUV, they found official-looking but completely fabricated citation books, multiple sets of handcuffs, pepper spray, and, most disturbingly, master keys to several houses in the neighborhood. By evening, all three had been formally charged. Beverly with fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. Daniels and Reynolds with impersonating security personnel, illegal possession of restraints, and attempted false imprisonment of a minor. Beverly's personal accounts were frozen pending investigation. The local news arrived as neighbors were still giving statements. Sophie, recovered from her ordeal, happily explained to a reporter how her grandmother had twisted the bad guy's arm like in the movies. The segment would later go viral, with my mother awkwardly being labeled a superhero grandma on social media. Mom naturally was unfazed by the attention. "I just did what any grandmother would do," she told me that night as we sat on the porch after Sophie had gone to bed. "Nobody puts handcuffs on my grandbaby. Not every grandmother knows exactly how to take down an armed man without injuring him," I pointed out. She shrugged. Details. The following weeks brought changes no one could have anticipated. Beverly's scheme had been more extensive than anyone realized. The investigation revealed that she had been running similar operations in 2 other neighborhoods, using different names and the same intimidation tactics. Authorities discovered over $450,000 in fraudulently collected fines across all 3 communities. The money was seized, and a judge ordered it to be returned to the residents who had been victimized. Mom extended her visit by 2 weeks to help the neighborhood establish a legitimate residents association. Democratically elected, with transparent finances and minimal, reasonable guidelines focused on community support rather than control. Mrs. Peterson was elected president, her gentle but now confident leadership a stark contrast to Beverly's tyranny. Mr. Chin became treasurer, meticulously tracking the modest dues that would fund community improvements. The Rodriguez family organized the first official neighborhood potluck, celebrating the cultural diversity that Beverly had tried to suppress. Sophie blossomed in the newly liberated atmosphere. Neighbors who had been afraid to interact now stopped to chat when she wheeled by. The children who had been kept away by their nervous parents now knocked on our door asking if Sophie could come out to play. Her adaptive bicycle became a neighborhood fixture as she zoomed along the sidewalks with a growing group of friends. The day before Mom was scheduled to return to Chicago, we received news that Beverly had accepted a plea deal, confessing to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. She would serve 5 years and pay substantial restitution. Daniels and Reynolds received 18 months each for their roles in the scheme. Think she learned anything? I asked Mom as we sat watching Sophie play with her new friends in the front yard. Mom snorted. Doubtful. People like that don't change easily. But she won't be running any fake HOAs for a long time. Would you really have broken his arm? I asked, curious about her threat during the confrontation. Mom's eyes twinkled. Of course not. But he didn't know that. Today marks exactly 1 year since what the neighborhood now calls the Great HOA Takedown. Mom is back visiting, this time just for fun rather than to battle corrupt pseudo-officials. The house smells like chocolate chip cookies, her specialty, and Sophie is excitedly telling her about her new adaptive sports program at school. We're preparing for the first annual Willow Creek Community Celebration. Tables line the street, which the city has closed for our block party. Children play freely on the pavement, and Sophie races among them in her wheelchair, her laughter carrying on the summer breeze. The changed atmosphere is remarkable. Neighbors chat on front porches without fearfully checking for security patrols. Gardens bloom with whatever plants people enjoy, not just Beverly's approved varieties. Houses have been painted in cheerful colors that would have incurred massive fines under the old regime. Mrs. Peterson stops by to consult with Mom about the day's schedule. They've become unlikely friends, the soft-spoken widow and the tough Chicago cop, united by their commitment to protecting the vulnerable. Your mother changed everything, Mrs. Peterson tells me when Mom steps away to help Sophie with something. Not just by standing up to Beverly but by showing us we could stand up for ourselves. I nod, watching my mother and daughter together. Sophie is demonstrating a new trick she's learned in her wheelchair, a small pop wheelie that makes Mom applaud with genuine delight. She's always been like that, I reply. She sees injustice and just fixes it. As the celebration begins and neighbors gather in the street, sharing food and stories, I realize how different things could have been. Without Mom's intervention, Sophie might still be afraid in her own home. Neighbors might still be paying fraudulent fines and living in isolation. Beverly's reign of terror might have continued for years. Sometimes it takes someone from outside to see clearly what those inside can't. That fear only has the power we give it, and that standing together is always stronger than standing alone. Later, as the sun sets and children play with glow sticks in the twilight, Sophie asks Mom to tell again how she took down the bad security guard. Mom laughs, her eyes twinkling. I just did what grandmas do best, kiddo. I protected what's mine. With a super cool arm twist, Sophie adds admiringly. Well, that part was just showing off a little, Mom admits with a wink. As I watch them together, my tough-as-nails mother and my resilient, joyful daughter, I'm reminded that family comes in all forms, and strength isn't always about physical power. Sometimes it's about knowing when to stand your ground, when to protect those who can't protect themselves, and when to twist someone's arm, literally or figuratively, to make things right. The fake HOA cops who tried to arrest my disabled daughter picked the absolute wrong family to mess with. They never stood a chance against retired Detective Catherine Harris, the grandmother who took down an entire fraudulent empire with one perfectly executed arm twist and decades of justice-seeking determination. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.